my dearest friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. Today I'm going to talk about the books that I finished in the first part of October. It's about 7 books that I'm going to discuss. One of them was actually quite longer, so I counted this more than one for myself. But anyway, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on all these books that I finished in the first part of October. A few of them were really fun, one of them really left an impression on me, and one of them was not a romance, so stick around to find out which one that is. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. The first book that I read is by Kay Bromberg. This is a sports romance that focuses on a Formula One driver. It is actually a release that came out last year, but this year the audiobook for it came out, so I decided to pick it up. And I really enjoyed this one. This one focuses on a heroine who is part of this mogul type of family. They have several businesses, they're multimillionaires, and the father, who is already aging and he would like to pass down his company to his daughter, she actually is part of one of their other companies. Then he invites her to shadow him so that she can take over the Formula One team that they own. So essentially, she is going to be like the PR and media personality, I think, at least if I remember correctly, for the team until she can eventually take over. And then the hero is one of the Formula One drivers. He is British, he is very arrogant, he is quite the player type of person. And the thing is that they actually meet before he knows that she is going to be the owner and before she knows that he is part of her team. So essentially they meet at this bar. Let me just set the scene here. So she's on a girls' night. She is sharing all these thoughts about her impending move to London and how she is going to have to do so many things, and how actually her friends are talking about how she's a workaholic and she really needs to start dating again. She has no interest in dating at all, but at the same time she is quite curious about her friends wanting to do a makeover for her, and you know, it's just quite a fun girls' night if you ask me. Now at the same time, the hero, he is on a boys' night out at the same bar, and they're having this wager of he needs to find like the most reluctant woman in the bar and hit on her and get her number or something like that. And he obviously chooses our heroine. So the two of them get to talking at this bar and they have an immediate connection, but at the same time something happens that makes their relationship already rocky from the start of their meeting. So essentially the book really gets off on the right footing for me because there is some angst, some tension. There's going to be a forbidden situation of them being on the same team, her being the almost owner, him being one of the drivers. And at the same time, he is someone who got promoted from Formula 3, I think, to Formula 1 because one of the drivers at Formula 1 had an accident. So he's going to step into big shoes. So he really needs to prove himself. So there's a lot of Formula 1 that I really enjoyed, because typically in a sports romance I want to see the sport within the book. So this one I really enjoyed because of that, and also the fact that the romance was quite front and center as well. So I really enjoyed the dynamic between the hero and heroine, so I gave this one 4 stars. The second book that I picked up is an audiobook by Ali Hazelwood. She surprised us all by releasing an audiobook this month, which is called Two Can Play. This book is a really fun Ali Hazelwood book. I really enjoyed it. It's a short novella. I think it was like 4 hours or so, and I think it only came out in audiobook format if I'm not mistaken. And it's available through Storytel or on any audiobook platform essentially. So I really enjoyed this one. It just brought all the good feelings about Ali Hazelwood books back to life for me. The book centers on a hero and heroine who both work in this very competitive field within video game development. She works for one company, he works for a competitive company, but then there is this very big project for a new video game that both of the companies want to win. And essentially both of them get invited to this kind of a retreat so that they can see whether they can actually have the two companies work together on this project. And the thing is that because they've been rivals for so long, they really have very bad blood between each other. So everyone who works at each respective company has some kind of bad blood with the people at the other company, so they don't really like each other very much. So they're all like, how are we going to survive this retreat without killing one another? So that already sets up a very good kind of component within the book that it makes it so fun. So when I started reading it, I was already very intrigued by how it's going to work out when it comes to the outcome for the video game itself, but then also for the romance, because it turns out that the hero and heroine had met many years back when the heroine was just starting off to try to find a job within the field. And then in the meantime, they've been meeting a couple of times here and there during conventions, and they have this kind of a miscommunication thing going on that always happens within Ali Hazelwood books, but it just works so well within this one. I was giddy when I was reading this. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read is Rope Me In by Kayla Gross. This book is the second book within a series. I think it's called Cowboys of Nighthawk series. And the first one, I enjoyed it. I gave that one 3 stars, but this one I enjoyed even more. This one I gave 4 stars. This one features the smaller brother of the heroes from the first book. And in the first book, we found out that there is this big issue between the 2 brothers because of the inheritance that they were supposed to receive when their father passed away. So within this one, I do think that it would be good if you read the first book and then move on to this one, because there's quite a lot of backstory that gets shared within the first book so that you can see where the hero is coming from in this book. And the hero essentially had an accident. He's working through getting back on his feet and then trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life, because the whole trajectory of his life has changed, because he thought he was going to do one thing with his life, but then in the meantime he needs to figure out what he's going to do because everything has changed. So essentially his romance is with a newcomer to their small town. It's a woman who starts working at the bar where he also works. And she is the kind of person who is not the stereotypical kind of woman within that small town. She has like purple hair and she has tattoos, and she's actually a musician, but no one knows that she's a musician in that small town. So that's quite kind of cool within the book, because there is this kind of a reveal at a part within the book that is quite nice. And essentially she's running away from her past. She's running away from something that happened to her within her musical career, and she just wants to lay low until she also figures out what she's going to do with herself in the meantime. So the 2 of them have a lot to work out on their own, but at the same time, once they meet up and they have this connection together, they definitely feel the most comfortable with each other because of what they're going through together. Even though both of them still need to share with each other what is going on, they kind of feel like they are good for each other. So I really enjoyed this one quite more than the other one, maybe because we have kind of like a broken hero and also a traumatized heroine to some extent, and the 2 of them just need to mend the pieces back together of each other. So I really enjoyed this one. Like I mentioned, I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read is by Jocelyn Soto. So I read, I think it was called Vicious Attraction a couple of days ago, and I really enjoyed that one. And then Storytel uploaded another book by this author, so I decided to pick it up. The book is called Worth Every Second, and it's actually a sports romance where we have, I just need to set the scene for this one here as well. We've got a hero who is an athlete, he's in a football team where he is the quarterback, and he's quite popular. He has this girlfriend for many years now, I think 3 or 4 years, and he goes on this training camp. He comes back early, goes to this party where his girlfriend is supposed to be, and finds out that she's cheating with one of his teammates. So he is absolutely livid because he has been faithful to her. He saw that she was like the person that he imagined that he would marry probably one day. So he was really livid. So what he did is something that I haven't heard of such sites before, but it was quite interesting to read about. There is this kind of site where you can post pictures of yourself, mostly like nude pictures, where people can comment on you more like as a work of art, and really to try to boost your confidence and to make you feel good in your own skin. So he decided to post a picture of himself on that website, and not so much as wanting to interact with other people, but kind of trying to boost his confidence after his confidence took a hit by the cheating. And then the heroine is someone who has frequented those sites in the past, but not really in a very long time. And then a friend of hers saw his picture and shared it with her and was like, you need to check this guy out because he is your type. So she decides to start interacting with him through that website. They start to exchange DMs. And at the same time, it turns out that they actually know each other in real life. They actually follow the same class, and by chance, they're sitting next to each other for the whole semester. So there's kind of a dual line of them meeting in real life, but also chatting with each other through this website. I really enjoyed the setup of this book. I really enjoyed how the two of them had a connection in both instances, even though it felt like at certain points he was cheating on her with herself because he was flirting with her in both instances and she did the same. So it was kind of weird in that way, but at the same time the angst was quite good. So I really enjoyed this one and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I finished this big boy here, When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This book has been on my TBR since it kind of blew up at the start of the year, but I've been putting it off because it's quite a chunky book and I really wanted to be in the mood for it because I had heard that it's quite verbose, that it's quite kind of like it has a flowery writing. I cannot say that word, flowery writing. So I was kind of hesitant to see if it's going to be something that I'm going to enjoy, but then I had heard Crystal as well as Jess from Honest Fiction speaking about this book in a very high regard. So I was like, if they love it, because I love their recommendations, I'm probably going to love it too. So I just need to stick with it and try it out. And then I did, and I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say that for me it's a 5-star read, and that is specifically because of the writing. I have to say that before I go into the plot, I'm just gonna share my thoughts overall. Basically, whenever you have the kind of book where the language is very much a main part of the book, so the way that it's written is going to make you either want to read it more or kind of put you off of it. So this is definitely that kind of a book. It has a very flowery and a very kind of verbose kind of a narrative. So when I started reading it, especially I had picked up the audiobook for it first, the first kind of hour maybe that I was reading it, I was like, what am I reading right now? It kind of got confusing for me because my brain was struggling to follow what I was hearing. And at the same time, I have the physical copy of it here, so I started to listen and read together. That's when it started to make more sense to me. So essentially, I kind of read the two of them together. That's when it really made an impression on me. So the first maybe 20% of the book was a bit of a struggle for me to get into the story, but once I got into it, I was really, really into it and I really, really enjoyed it. So I do have to say that because of that, I'm giving it 4 stars because I've read other romantasy books or also fantasy books before that were heavy on the world building, that you really needed to focus on what exactly is being described so that you can get into that world. And in this one, it's just the type of words and really the type of language that is used is maybe something that I struggled with a little bit because also English is not my native language. I mean, I'm quite good at English, but at the same time, I probably don't understand it on the same level as a native speaker would. So I did have certain kind of small issues with the fact that it was difficult to get into because of the way that it was written. At the same time, I can definitely appreciate that that is a part of the book that stands out above some other romantasy books that we have at the moment that are quite popular. So I do appreciate that at the same time. So the book centers on our heroine, who is this kind of a mercenary assassin kind of type of heroine, who is hired by this kind of a rebellious group within this world. And she is hired to kill these bad people within their society. And within the start of the book, she is on a mission. During this mission, she meets this mysterious kind of man. And this mysterious man turns out to be our hero, who is a prince of this realm. His name is Khan. And the two of them, after certain happenings, meet under other circumstances. And so the story begins. This book features not only a romance, it also features a lot of action because there's dragons within the book, but most of the dragon scenes occur towards the end of the book. But because this is not going to be a standalone book, it's going to be more interesting for us to see what will happen next year when the second book releases, obviously. We also find out that the heroine is not just this simple mercenary within this world. She has a very big backstory that goes back to actually a relationship that she used to have with Khan before. Something that she doesn't really remember at the start of the book. So there's a lot of interesting things to unravel within this story. There's a lot of things that will get revealed to us as the story goes. At the same time, we have a hero who is absolutely marvelous. Every romance-loving reader will appreciate Khan because he is very understanding, very patient. He is the kind of hero who, basically because she is the one for him, he is going to move heaven and earth for her. He's willing to let her go so that she can kind of come to the conclusion herself that they're meant to be. So he's not, while he's obsessive, he's the kind of obsessive over her who is also willing to give her the space to discover her own things within life and then come back to him. So I love him so much. There's just so many things and so many actions that I loved, and so many just small gestures that he made towards her that just make you swoon when it comes to the hero and the relationship that he's trying to build with the heroine. I loved it. I really love that part within the book. So really, I am really looking forward to the second book within this installment, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It's definitely worth the hype. The next book is the only book that is actually not a romance, and that one I picked up strictly because of Jess and Tori, because they're going to be doing a read along together for their podcast. They have this podcast, Jess and The Bookish Life of Jess and Tori, and the two of them had vowed that they were going to read a Frida McFadden book this month, and they decided that it's going to be The Boyfriend, and at the same time the audiobook became available to me, so I decided to pick it up before the podcast, and I think it's going to be next week, so that I can see whether my opinion of that book is going to be similar to theirs. And The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden is a thriller which is very easily consumable. I can completely understand why people love Frida McFadden's books, because they're quite easy to read. They're quite kind of entertaining, and they're page turners. So they're short. You want to get through it to see the plot twist. So I can completely understand why they're so hyped. And she's popping out these books like one after the other. So it's completely normal that she's going to remain within the hype of her career at the moment. So I haven't read any other books by this author, by the way. This is the first book that I'm picking up by this author, and I did enjoy it. It was a very enjoyable thriller, but I wouldn't say that it's the best thriller that I've read. So we've got a heroine who lives in this apartment building. She lives in this apartment building where one of her best friends lives in the same building. Another best friend is not living in that building, but her boyfriend now lives in that building, who is also the super of the building. So essentially, like, the friend group are all coming together within this space, let's say. At the same time, something weird is going on. And the weird thing is that we have different chapters. So we've got chapters that are centering on the heroine, but we've got chapters that go back to the childhood of one of the characters within the book, and we're sensing that their childhood has a very big impact on what is going to happen within the story. There is this kind of a serial killer situation that is developing within the past part of the story that is probably going to get projected into the future. So essentially we get roped into this angsty kind of situation of one of the characters, their backstory kind of being projected into the future, because the two characters, so the heroine who lives in this apartment building and the hero from the past, they eventually meet. It's interesting. It's interesting, and the plot twist in the end definitely kind of was interesting and surprising. I think that some people will probably guess that there is kind of something fishy going on with a certain character within the book. I just don't want to spoil any of the plot twists, so I'm not mentioning any character names, but essentially it was fun. But the thing is, maybe because I read the audiobook for it, certain parts within the later part of the audiobook kind of irked me. Maybe it was done on purpose because one of the characters is not supposed to be likable, maybe to some extent, but at the same time, I don't know, I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I'm curious to see what Tori and Jess are going to think about this one. The last book I'm going to talk about is a book that I just finished yesterday, and it's my first Christmas holiday read for this year. The book is called Make the Season Bright, and it's by an author who I think writes strictly sapphic romances. The 3 books by this author, Ashley Herring Blake, are sapphic romances that are quite popular in the book community, but I have not picked them up yet. I'm not sure if I am going to pick them up because I have read some of my favorite YouTubers reading them. Some of them love them, some of them don't, so I'm kind of on the fence whether I should pick them up. But then this book just recently came out on audiobook, and I was like, I want to try it out to see if I'm going to like it because the cover is gorgeous. It's a holiday romance. Typically those are more kind of positive when it comes to the content within the books, but then I had not read the synopsis of this book, so I was kind of having assumptions on the basis of, you know, holiday themed stuff, but at the same time I didn't really know that it's not exactly the kind of read that I was thinking that it's going to be. Anyway, so we've got a second chance romance here where the 2 heroines have had quite a big of a history together. They used to be best friends, like childhood best friends. They moved over to have a romantic relationship together. They lived together. They even got engaged, but then something happened and they split up. The 2 of them, both of them are musicians. One of them is a classically trained musician. The other one is more like of a pop kind of a musician. And the 2 of them, by chance, are going to be visiting the same family, unbeknownst to one another. They're going to visit the same family for the holiday period because one of them is friends with one of the people of that family and the other one of another person within that family. So really by chance they get to spend the holidays together, and they need to rehash what has happened between them, whether they can move past what has happened, and whether they're going to get their happily ever after all. And the thing within this book is, you know, like I mentioned, when it comes to Christmas and holiday themed books, I always feel like there needs to be some kind of a positive correlation to the plot, because it's just the season of, you know, happiness and just sharing and caring and loving and family and, you know, everything. I fully understand it. For some people that's not the case, so maybe those kinds of books are not going to be it for me. But the thing is that this one really was focusing on all the things that were going wrong between the 2 heroines, and within getting a second chance, I feel like people really need to rehash. They need to communicate about what has happened and what went wrong and how they can move past that. And here we didn't really get too much of that. Only at the end did we get that a little bit. Most of the things that were going on were like holiday shenanigans and them getting kind of forced to work together on certain projects for the holiday period. And, you know, I can appreciate that, but at the same time they were bickering so much, and there was so much animosity between them that I couldn't really find it in me to root for them too much throughout most of the book. So that is what didn't work for me within this one. I did enjoy it somewhat, you know, the writing was good, and the building up of the whole scenery and also the other characters that were part of the whole story, I enjoyed that. Just the romance was not the best, so I gave this one 3 stars. I feel so out of breath. I haven't been feeling my best, I'm sorry, so I am kind of trying to get through speaking in this video, but I hope you did enjoy this one. These were all the books that I managed to finish in the first part of October. I've been all over the place reading all kinds of books essentially, but I'm just cruising through with all my moods kind of going up and down everywhere. But I've been enjoying what I've been reading, so it's not a bad thing after all. Please let me know what you've been reading lately. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Please don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care.